This is Solve It for Kids.
Hello, my amazing and curious friends. My name is Jennifer, the Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, and this is Solve It for Kids, the podcast that gives kids and families a peek inside the real world of scientists, engineers, and experts as they solve problems in their jobs using creativity, cooperation, and critical thinking. And now please welcome to the show my podcast partner, Galactic Space Geek, Jeff Gagne.
Hello, Jennifer, and hello, listeners. Galactic Space Geek Jeff is not the only space geek on this episode.
There's plenty more of us. So what problem are we solving today?
Why is the International Space Station so important?
Why is the International Space Station important? Ooh, this is going to be tons of fun. So, who is our guest today, Jeff?
We have just the right guest today. We have the wonderful Erin Winick Anthony. She is a fabulous science communicator. She is the founder of Steam Power Media, and she just left a job working for, you guessed it, NASA.
Welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. This is going to be such a fun episode because you've done so many cool things. It's kind of hard to figure out what we're going to talk about.
Sure.
But I'm going to start with the very basic question. When you were a kid, did you always love space?
I'd say yes. I grew up in Florida, so I got to see the rocket launches growing up and all the space shuttles, which I think is a common thing for Florida people.
Yes.
But I'd say at my core, I always loved making things. That was kind of my love from the start, whether it was like sewing and Halloween costumes or Legos, like that's kind of was always my core interest.
Yes. Science in action. That's what I say. That's what I love. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we jump into what you're doing now, I love the idea of, I always loved making, and you just named several different types of making. Can you sort of connect some dots for us, maybe junior high, high school into college, of what sort of kept that going for you?
Yeah, I think it started with my mom was always really into crafting stuff. So I would always do the arts and crafts, sewing, Halloween costumes. I would build Rube Goldberg machines around, our living room and stuff like that. Big support from my parents for being willing to have stuff taped to the television and all of that.
There you go.
But,
nice.
And then when I got a little older, I started kind of doing some projects because I wanted to and having some ideas and pursuing it. Whether it was starting with kits or things like that, or a little rocket kit, stuff like that. That's what I always loved. And then high school, I also say making is also writing. I was editor-in-chief of my high school paper. So I've done making in all forms, whether it's more hands-on or writing. And that's kind of been the ongoing thing throughout my whole life, always trying to find different stuff to make.
Oh, that's cool. So how did you get into NASA and what did you do when you worked at NASA?
Yeah, so I was the long title of a science communication specialist for the International Space Station, which basically means a storyteller for all of the science that happens off of the Earth up in orbit, which was super, super cool, which I basically got to learn about all of the science and then share it with the world in a bunch of different ways.
I love that you described it that way, as a storyteller of all the science that happened on the International Space Station. So can you tell us, what was the most difficult thing, I guess, at the beginning? Because people didn't really know, what is this thing? What are we doing? It's floating around, right? Where did you start with that story?
Yeah, I think sometimes we were telling these stories in person at outreach events. Sometimes we were doing them online. So I think we'd start at different places. Whenever I got to talk to someone in person, though, I never wanted to assume that they knew something. First, I just want people to know that the space station exists and it's up there and it's been up there for more than 20 years now. And we've had humans continuously living on it. So if you were born after November 2000, there have been people living in space your entire life continuously, which is pretty insane. So that's usually where we started. There's there's people up there and they're doing science that helps us back here on Earth. And that's kind of the arc we usually take.
I love that.
So with that, before we get into, I want to ask about some of the specifics of those, but you mentioned that you were telling that story in multiple ways. Mm-hmm. Can you describe those multiple ways?
Yeah, so I have a technical background myself, but I'm an engineer who liked to write. So writing was a big way. We would write lots of articles and things like that for nasa.gov, the website. I got to help run Twitter account, or now X account, ISS_research. So got to make posts about all different updates that were happening up on the space station. And then sometimes we even got to work with the astronauts themselves to help them have better understand about how to tell the science story. Because when they're up there for 6 months, work on hundreds of experiments, it's hard for them to be an expert on all of those. So helping them be those storytellers too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and we've learned on the show here too, is you have to make it exciting and interesting, but also understandable. Right. Yeah, so if you're using the big, huge words and you're talking about, we're doing all of this stuff. I mean, people are like, okay, but even I don't even understand what some of that is. Yeah, so the big question is, why is the International Space Station important? And I think that's going to lead us into a lot of the examples that you would give. So if someone were to say to you, why should I care about the International Space Station? What would you say?
Yeah, well, I think people don't realize that it is at its core an orbiting laboratory. So, and it's the one that we've had for this long period of time and hopefully a little while longer.
Yes.
And the research that we do there just has so many benefits, both back here on Earth and helping us explore further, because we needed testing grounds to be able to test things in space before we go to the moon, Mars, even if it's just seeing how humans can live in space for long periods of time. We want to live in space for, a year, 2 years before we send someone out on a Mars mission to do that. So we can make sure they're going to be healthy. So it's kind of both of those things paired together, along with one other thing, which is we have a really cool perspective back on Earth from the space station as well. So we get to learn a lot about our own planet from that orbiting laboratory as well.
Yep.
So my mind is going off in so many different directions right now. How cool. So I want to back it up just one step in terms of connecting how you got this job.
Yeah.
When you applied to NASA, were you applying specifically for, or generally for, some sort of, hey, I will science communicate whatever you want me to? Or was it specifically, there was an opening for the ISS and that was what you applied for?
It was specifically for this.
Wow.
So, I mentioned I have an engineering background. My kind of bridge between that was I worked as a journalist for a couple of years for MIT Technology Review. And while I was there, I wrote about, first of all, manufacturing and making stuff, no surprise. And then I bridged over to writing about space. And that was kind of my jump that allowed me to come over to NASA. And I saw the job online and applied for it. And it ended up working out. But it was specifically for communicating science for the space station.
I actually didn't know that they specifically targeted. I just kind of pictured that NASA had a team, and then once their team was put together, then they kind of parceled it out. So do you remember your first either science experiment or your first communication of the ISS out into the world?
Yeah, the first thing I put out there, well, the first article that I wrote that got published on nasa.gov was about some of the upcoming researchers, like the young researchers that were doing research on the space station. So it was cool to be able to tell a human story connected with that. But I'll say my first big project was something called NASA Explorers. And it was a mini documentary series that highlighted two awesome women scientists from having the idea of a science experiment they wanted to conduct to making the experiment on Earth, launching it to the space station, having an astronaut conduct it, bring it back, and then getting results. So that was, I came in like halfway through the project because they've been doing this for a long time, because science takes a long time.
It takes years sometimes. Yes, it does.
So it was really cool because I got to help like storyboard and script that and share it on social media and put that whole story together.
That's fantastic. I could just imagine how they felt after all of these years, and then they see their science being done on the space station. Can you think of any like really cool experiments that you got to talk about or that you know about that happened in space and share that with our listeners?
Yeah, well, one of my just personal favorites, because I mentioned I have an engineering background, so I like robots.
Oh my God. I
Big
love
robot fans.
robots.
Yes, got to bring the robots. So there
Yes.
are 3 really adorable robots called the Astro Bees on the space station.
Yes.
Okay.
And they are cubes. They are Honey, Bumble, and Queen. And
Oh my
they are
gosh.
able to be programmed to test out robots working by themselves in space.
Wow.
Because for things like the Gateway, which is going to be something like a space station that orbits around the moon,
Right.
there won't be people on it all the time. So it'd be really helpful to have robots that could do little things and monitor it, whether it's, pulling a sock out of an air vent or moving some cargo around. And they've been testing these on the space station to see if that's possible, test out some of their different detections. And they've even had students that have programmed movements of them from Earth in some different robotics competitions.
Wow.
So super cool. And they have little blinky eyes on the front of them. So it gives them a little personality.
Do
too.
they have arms too to move things?
They are attachable. They're normally not, but you can attach these little arms onto it that can kind of grab stuff. So they can grab onto bars and things like
Oh
that.
my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Talk
So,
about
personal
directly linking science fiction to science fact.
Yeah.
We will have links of these on the website because I got to go look these things up now. I got to find
Highly
little
recommend.
videos on them. Yes, the Astro Bees. Cool.
Yeah.
For sure. So when you are sharing these stories, like you said, out to the world, are you also the one that is interacting back if kids or the general public are posting comments on, say, a social media about what you're posting? Are you also giving the answers to those?
Yeah, sometimes, or I'm helping feed the information to the people that are, because sometimes NASA has a lot of social media accounts and there's someone behind all of those, right?
Oh, wow.
And so if we don't know, we knew the right people to go ask to give the answers to those questions too. So sometimes I was the one typing it out. Sometimes I was the one feeding the information so that you can get that answer to the person.
Okay. I love knowing that there is someone on the other end.
Yes.
Because just like you said, NASA does have so many, and
they do.
They share so much of their information out with the world.
Absolutely.
That regardless of what your interest is, whether it's robots or the International Space Station or astronauts or the rockets, whatever it is, you can interact with the people that are working just like you when you were doing it at NASA to get questions answered, to go deeper, get more information. I think that's fascinating.
Yes, it's really fun. So I want to know, what are some of the other ones that you covered? Because, I keep going back to, the International Space Station has been up there 20 years and it's doing well. Yay. And then it just it's been extended for another 10 years. So you worked on that program as well. Like, what did you do? Like, how do you support that? Saying we need this for another 10 years because we're learning X.
Yeah, I got to work on a big project. It was called the International Space Station Benefits for Humanity book, which is both a print book and a huge project online.
Wow.
That was basically looking at what are all the ways that all of this research has helped us back on Earth. And this was, I think, my favorite project I worked on while I was there because I got to dig into all these results too and get to see some of that myself.
Wow.
So I'll give you a couple examples of my favorites. So one of them, there's something up there called the NICER telescope, which of course is a NASA acronym, but it's a telescope studying neutron stars. And one of the ways that it does that is using X-rays. And to be able to make this telescope, they had to make this device that basically turned X-rays on and off really fast. And on Earth, it's similar to a technology that's used for CT scans, which is an important type of medical technology. And sometimes if you need to get a scan and see what's going on inside your body, you can go get a CT scan. And so some NASA engineers paired up with a scientist over at Harvard to go see, can we apply this technology to make CT scans that are lighter weight because they're very big right now.
Oh, they're huge.
Yes, and have lower radiation doses. So they're still working on developing it, but it moved through research and it looks pretty promising. And it could remove some big spinning parts from CT scans. So that was a less direct, they weren't doing it for that purpose. But then one that you might actually have in your house is Procter & Gamble P&G. They make a bunch of stuff you might have in your house, soaps, detergents, all that sort of stuff. They've been researching something called colloids in space, which colloids are particles suspended in a liquid. So that could be a mud, it can be milk, it can be a shampoo. And in microgravity up there where things float, we can study things without the forces of gravity acting on stuff, which on Earth, there's just not really any way to avoid that. And that's some of the things that create settling in products. So your shampoo or soap might separate and might have like a shorter shelf life.
Right.
Well, they've been researching that on the International Space Station. And in one of their most recent Febreze Unstoppables products, they credit the research they did on the space station to being able to make that. So,
oh my gosh.
Two very opposite ends of the spectrum, but both impacts that we've had from the space station.
That's really cool. I mean, everyday life stuff that you don't even think about, we learned about up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So many
different things. So because you worked on that project, Galactic Space Geek Jeff has to say a sincere thank you.
Yes,
for
absolutely.
your tiny part in getting the ISS extended.
Thank you.
Yes.
As super cool science communicator, Erin, and the person who worked on that project, can you sum up, because we have to get to some of your other stuff that you're doing as well. Can you sum up for our listeners your answer to why is the ISS important?
Yeah, I think my summary would be there's cutting edge research happening up there that we can't do anywhere else. And it has a legacy of incredible impact, and it will continue to do so thanks to the humans that are living there.
Yeah, exactly.
Love that.
And the thing about that is, I invite all of you to go and look this up and Google all of the things because, we didn't even get into all of the medical things that they've learned about humans and how this is so important. I did a book called Space Care, Medicine and Microgravity with Mayo Clinic Press, and it's all about how your heart changes shape if you're up there, right? And so we've learned all these things about the human body, which we're going to need to know when we go to the moon. So this is so fun. But now tell us, you left NASA. So what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I was with NASA for nearly 4 years, which was incredible. And I loved it. But I wanted to kind of go out and apply all of the science communication things I was doing to other areas of science and engineering as well. So I have been doing this kind of on the side for a while, but now took the big leap. And I'm doing a huge variety of things, kind of as you mentioned, but I'll say one of the coolest that I'm going to get to do is this December, I am going on a science expedition for 2 months. And I'm going to be in the middle of the Mediterranean on a ship that's studying geology by taking core samples of the ocean floor.
Oh my gosh. Do you need extra?
We love core samples.
I was going to say, do you need extra people? We could just go with you. That would be so fun.
I wish I could bring everyone. I will say my job there is I'm going to be sharing the expedition with the world. So I'm going to be on the ship, the Joides Resolution. And so I'll be doing ship to shore broadcasts. So if you have your classroom is interested in talking to me while I'm out at sea.
Oh, that's so cool.
You can have your teachers sign up for a ship to shore broadcast through Joides Resolution. And so I can talk with museums and classrooms and give you a tour of the ship and show you all the science that's happening. And then I'll also be writing for their website, doing social media, and I get to do my own personal projects. So I'm going to do a short form video series while I'm out there. So you'll be seeing stuff pop up on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. So
this is really cool.
That sounds excellent.
What are the scientists hoping to learn from there? Like, how far are core samples going?
Yeah. So the mission that I'm on, they're going, so you have to go, first of all, hit the ocean
through the water
already a ways down. And then the deepest one is going to be 1.4 kilometers. So pretty deep.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the thing that they are largely studying is the Messian salinity crisis. So this is a long time ago. The Mediterranean dried up largely and was a bunch of salt. Basically, a big salt giant was left behind.
Okay.
And it changed a lot of the dynamics of Earth's oceans. And so they're going back to study this for history purposes, but also there's applications for learning about how major changes in the ocean affect carbon storage and climate going forward and future weather patterns and things like that. So they're going to go all the way down so that they can get to that part of our history in the rock of the ocean.
Wow. It's amazing. That's amazing. That's
It
gonna be
really
so
is.
fun.
That's so cool and so science-y, for
Yes.
lack of a better word, in terms of
Perfect word.
pulling those core samples from the middle of the Mediterranean. Okay, well, there's a lake in your way. So what? We're going to solve that with engineering, and we are going to get the core samples from right where we want them, because those layers will tell us the story that we need and give us the information we need. That is an excellent thing. And you said you were leaving in December for that?
Yeah.
That
start of
is
December.
a great time to go there. That is super
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
So in our introduction, I also mentioned that you are the founder of Steam Power Media. Can you
Mhm.
tell us about that?
Yeah. So the project that I just mentioned falls underneath that umbrella, but
Makes sense.
largely I started my own company to show the awesome connections between science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and show the creativity that is really important for science and engineering. So I'm doing that through creating my own social media content, but also working with museums and other organizations to be able to make awesome content that connects those things for them. And I've been working with a lot of different science and engineering companies to help them learn how to better share their science with the world, whether that's through writing or presentations or, again, social media, kind of taking what I've learned and hoping to share it with a bunch more people.
That's really cool. And I think that's really important. And that's sort of what we do here on our podcast too.
Yeah.
But I love how the trend these days is to get science so that everybody understands it instead of just a select few, but everybody can understand it and get excited about it. And, so my question for you, which you can answer now or after your expedition, but we are big fans of space and the ocean. Right?
Yes.
So astronaut, aquanaut. So I'm curious right now, which one do you like better? And do you think it'll change after you go on your expedition?
Well, yeah, here's the thing. I get a chance to actually go to the ocean. I haven't gotten the chance to go to space yet.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
So, the ocean's really winning out in that sense. But if someone wants to send me to space, that answer can easily change.
There you go. We'll just put that out there for NASA to hear or something.
Just saying, So.
Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. I would like to ask one sort of tradecraft question.
Yeah.
Because you are fabulous to watch and your science communication is terrific and you've done it at the highest level of NASA and the ISS. Without giving away a trade secret, what is something that general people can do, whether it's scientists that work at companies, what is something they can do to make their science, make their work, their problem solving a little bit more understandable to the rest of us that maybe don't know the jargon or lots of the intricacies of their daily stuff?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned one of the key things there, which is figuring out how to take out the jargon and technical words. And usually that comes down to often those words aren't needed. You can reframe the sentence. You can rephrase how you're talking about it. Or if you have to, define it. Tell people what that very important word in your field needs, because sometimes there is an important word. But just by taking that out, you force yourself to think about it differently and from the perspective of someone who hasn't been in that field. So highly recommend that. And then also, big fan of capture the science and engineering as it's happening. Visuals are so important for people.
Right now, they are.
Yeah. And often when I'm talking with scientists and I'm like, I want to share what you've done, they're like, oh, we didn't take any pictures while we were doing this. All we have is like the results and the data, which the data is important, but to get people to care and understand the humanity and the team behind it, take those pictures as much as possible. And that's so important for helping share.
Yes.
What a wonderful answer. I can feel your heart breaking when you talk to the engineers and they give you that answer of, oh, we didn't take any pictures. Did you want those?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, absolutely. Because that's as close to these people can get because they're not actually doing it. Like they can do the science, which is really exciting. So you take the pictures and then you lay out the story. And that's what I do. And, so when I write my science books for kids, I try to talk at their level, meaning instead of saying something is, 100 feet long or whatever, I'll say it's as big as a football field, right? Like you put an image in their head and then boom, they understand exactly what you're talking about, which makes it a lot easier. Even it could be challenging when you're dealing with very, in-depth STEM topics, but it's still doable. I mean, we've had some conversations on the show that, one was like, how do you hear a black hole? And we're like, okay, like, how is the scientist really going to explain?
Right.
And he did. So it's an audio podcast. And if you go back and listen to that episode, you will understand how you can hear a black hole. It's so really, cool. Really cool. So now we are kind of at the I know we could talk to you forever. But we are kind of at that time in the show where we ask our guests to give our listeners a challenge. I'm very curious what your challenge will be, Erin.
Yes. So I want you to go out and see the International Space Station with your own 2 eyes. And the way you can do that is going to Spot the Station. NASA has a website called Spot the Station where you can put in where you live and your address. And you can get notifications on your phone, or your parent can, and it'll tell you when the space station's going to be flying over. It'll tell you where in the sky, the directions it's coming from. So as long as you know which directions are north, south, east, and west, you can see that. And it is the 3rd brightest thing in the sky after the sun and the moon. It'll go pretty quickly over and wave at those astronauts who were up there on board.
They probably won't see you, but you
never know. Yeah.
I am a big fan of Spot the Station. There was a time when, and I haven't done it, I need to get back into it now to do this challenge that you've just given all of us, because I am now a huge Erin fan of spotting the station as many times in a row as possible from where I live when it's not cloudy. I was allowed to miss it if it happened to be cloudy here.
Fair enough.
I love that challenge.
Yes, this was fabulous. Well, we have had so much fun.
Yes.
Now, before we go, tell us where everybody can find you, Erin, on social media so they can follow you, especially on this expedition, which you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so you can follow me personally at Erin Winick, ErinWinick, on all the social media platforms. And if you want to follow this expedition when I leave, I'll be out there from December to February. Look up the JOIDES resolution, JOIDES resolution, and you can find them on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook are probably the best ones.
This is going to be so much fun. Excellent. We are definitely going to be following you.
Totally. And I can't wait for the master's level class you're going to be giving all of us on how you translate the high level geology that's going to be working that you just started explaining that the scientists are going to be doing, and how you translate that so all the rest of us understand.
I've got some work to do there myself still, so I've got a few months before I leave.
You've got between now and December.
I have no doubt that you will get this done. Well, thank you so much, Erin. It was awesome. Thank you for being on Solve It for Kids.
Thank you, Erin.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
How much fun is that? Sometimes we really do need longer episodes because I've got more questions and I want to keep talking to Miss Erin. But
you say that about everybody, Jeff.
You remember that thing about you and I being curious?
Yes.
But the ISS and all of the work Erin has done, both sharing the ISS for NASA and now as her own science communicator with Steam Powered Media.
Yes.
Wow, and bringing it right back to something every single one of us can do. A lot of us probably already have, and that's why we've neglected it and we haven't been doing it recently. So let's all get on spotthestation.gov. Let's find out when the ISS is coming over our area to be visible, and let's locate it. Jen, I've got a question for you. When you see the station go over, do you wave?
Absolutely.
Yes, so do I.
Absolutely. I mean, I wave to planes. A few weeks ago, the Blue Angels were here for the Sea and Sky show, and their Blue Angels are flying over, and, Naval Academy grad here. I'm waving. Woo! Go Navy!
Of course.
Of course you do that. So when you listen to this, I want to know, all of you listeners, what you found most interesting. Because there were so many different things that we talked about.
Yes.
About the International Space Station and why it's going to stay up there and how it's going to stay up there. And all of these different things, why it's so important for all of the science that we're learning here on the planet. So I'm curious to see if there was one thing you learned from what Erin said that you wanted to share with your family or friends, and then let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So tag us on our social media. We're at KidSolve at Facebook, Instagram, and X. And don't forget to check out our website, solveitforkids.com, where we have information on every podcast episode and books that you can choose from to learn more.
Don't forget to go follow Erin on her social. She is super easy to find, and she does amazing social media about lots of stuff space, not just the International Space Station. Until next time, you'll hear Jen and Jeff on Solve It for Kids.